Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Today's video is based off of the epic final that Victor Crouin and Marwan Shorbagy recently played in France. If you haven't watched this match, you need to check it out at PSA Squash TV. It is epic. This video is based on a few specific things from that match, some observations that I'm hoping will really help you. And as you can see on your screen, here's what you can expect. There is a very interesting correlation between length and pressure that you create. Something you probably know, but I really want to spell this out because it's going to become conscious, and when you're aware of it, you will have the conscious choice to try and make adjustments. The second thing we're going to look at is related, and it is what effective length, but more importantly also width hitting looks like, and the implications that has based on your opponent's position on the court. And again, I'm hoping that this raises your awareness so that you can make a conscious choice to make adjustments the next time you're on court. Or if you don't play as much anymore, when you're watching the players on court, you can see all the microprocessing that's happening so you can really gain a true appreciation for what they do. And then the third thing, in the middle of that match, there was something that was maybe warranted, maybe unwarranted. I'm not speculating. I just want to talk about it briefly in a respectful manner because it is in the one clip that I'm going to show you guys that's going to highlight everything else that we're going to talk about. So let's begin with the first thing, targets and implications. So the first thing we're going to look at is when the ball catches the sidewall, that correlation I was telling you about. And as you can see, I've created a diagram here for your reference. And the idea here is simple. The earlier a player's shot touches the sidewall, the sooner it pops out into the middle of the court, and the sooner an opponent is able to get onto that ball. So let's say you're player one, let's say your opponent is here on the tee. If you hit with an angle such as the black line over here that catches the sidewall early, it's going to pop out early, and that is a perfect opportunity for your opponent to just step across the tee and take your ball early. Now, if you hit that ball fast with this angle, you're giving yourself even less time. If you hit it slower with this angle, you're giving yourself a little bit more time to recover to the tee. So that's another dimension to all of this. If you hit with the yellow angle, catches the sidewall a little bit later, that ball is going to pop out a bit more, but your opponent's still going to be able to cut it off pretty comfortably. In fact, they're forced to cut it off just around the back of the service box, because if they don't, the ball is going to bounce twice and they're out of the rally. If you end up getting that green angle, your opponent is potentially going to be pushed into the back of the court, and they're going to be hitting out of the back corner. Now, there are many factors that tie into this, depending on your opponent's movement paths, how high their tee position is, how likely they are to volley, how aggressive they are in nature, etc., etc. But this is a general trend that you're going to notice. And in the video clip you're going to see in a minute, you're going to notice this trend as it's pretty evident. Now, the second trend we want to talk about here are going into a little bit more detail based on your opponent's tee position, like I was talking about. So what you're going to notice, and if you've watched a lot of squash, and I've actually made a video on this before with leveraging Ali Farag, talking about effective length hitting, and I'll link to it over here at the top of your screen, so check it out if you haven't. But what most of players do, so let's say you have player one, which is P1 at the bottom, and they're hitting this drive, and don't mind the angle, it's not to scale. You have your opponent. Most players, what they do is they take their first step sort of laterally off the tee in order to search for a volley. And then from there, they have this pushback movement. And if you watch any of the top players, they go in first and then they make an adjustment to move back. What the goal is when you're player one, your goal is to try and catch that sidewall where your opponent is likely to come and try to volley the ball. And in the clip that we're going to show you in a minute, you see Victor and Marwan both catching the sidewall on occasion exactly where they want to, and then sometimes it's a bit short, going back to the diagram we just talked about a moment ago. So the idea here is you don't want the ball to be loose where your opponent is likely to make that first lateral movement. So now if your opponent's tee position, like I was saying, is high up here, well, then you want that ball to catch the sidewall a bit further up in the court because that's where their instinctive first movement is. If your opponent starts further back in the court, then you might want that ball to catch sidewall a little bit later because essentially it needs to be catching sidewall in line with your opponent across the middle of the court. So I hope that that is helpful to you, and I hope that clarifies, and we're going to see it in a minute. Now, the third thing is talking about the meaning of effective width and kind of what those target implications look like. So if you have player one over here, player one hits two different types of cross courts, and then you have your opponent. Let's say we're talking about a couple of scenarios in this diagram. So opponent one takes a high tee position, opponent two takes a deeper tee position. So let's say we look at length number one, which is this top cross court over here, and then the ball is coming across through the middle of the court, but catching the back wall in the back of the court. Now, the main point I want to make here is that there isn't one correct shot. The correct shot depends on your opponent's position. So if my opponent was a type of opponent that's taking a very high tee position and likes to volley a lot, length one, what may be considered a conventionally effective length cross-court target is actually not a good cross-court because this opponent is high up, they're going to take one step across the tee and they're going to cut this ball off on the volley. If you hit it hard, now you've given yourself even less time because the ball's moving faster, which gives you less time, and your opponent's high on the tee and they're volleying. So this is not an effective length for opponent one. However, the same length for opponent two that stands deeper in the court is an effective length because they're not necessarily going to be able to cut it off. They're likely going to move back into the court, and if you get a nice angle, this ball's going to hit the side wall and then fade into the back corner. Now if you look at length two, the sharper angle for the cross court, you see that for opponent one, this angle is extremely effective because the ball's extra wide. Opponent one's, again, aggressive, high tee position. They like to volley, so they're going to move laterally across the tee. But if you get that width, you're catching that side wall at the furthest point across from your opponent, like we just talked about a moment ago, and they're not going to be able to volley that. So they're going to move in, and then they're going to have to make a quick last-minute adjustment back to get this ball. A lot of players that overcommit to that volley will then get trapped because this ball is going to be coming back at them. So then spacing becomes an issue, and then shot quality and their shot selection is limited and their shot quality becomes poor. So cross court 2, L2 that I've labeled here, is a far more effective cross court for an opponent. Opponent 1 in my diagram, which again describes someone that is aggressive, takes a high tee position, likes to volley. Cross court 2, when it comes to opponent 2, is not as effective because in this case opponent 2 is already further back in the tee, and if they take a first step kind of backwards, the ball is coming right to them and they're going to have a nice comfortable hitting zone in this position, and player 1 is going to be pinned on the left side of the court, so opponent 2 is going to have the whole wall to hit down. Now obviously if someone hits cross court number 2, the wide cross court, and you have a high tee position, the goal here is not to instinctively go for that volley, it's to drop back so that you can get in appropriate position with appropriate spacing to cover that cross court. Okay, it's a lot of theory. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments section. I would love for you to try some of this out and also leave a comment after testing it out on court yourself so you can tell me whether you became more aware of these scenarios and whether you were able to make any micro adjustments to actually catch your opponent out. Let's check out a rally from that final that I'm talking about. This is again from game 3, and as you see at the bottom over there, the scores are 2-2. Thank you for PSA Squash TV for sharing these clips with us. Check it out. We're going to watch the clip once, no comment, well, minimal commentary for me, and then we're going to watch it again with some breakdowns. And as you're watching, look for that sidewall target and look at how much pressure the opponent is under and what the quality of shot looks like. So Victor's obviously doing a bunch of work, using height well to sort of defend and buy time for himself. Not as accurate as it could be, but it's still buying him some time. See a bunch of sidewall early over there, balls popping out. Opponents are getting on it early. Hope you noticed that. We're going to break that down in a minute, and that's the push that we're talking about. Okay, so let's look at this push from Victor. I'm not judging, I'm not taking any sides about what's right and what's wrong. I just want to share a couple of perspectives. So if you look at this push from this angle, Marwan goes in to hit this drop shot, and then he stands on the ball. Victor wants to go get that ball. He can't. And then there, he basically just pushes Marwan. And the question is, okay, why is he doing this? He's doing this to make a point. Again, I'm not condoning it. I just want to share the perspective as to why. So oftentimes when we play players, whether they actually are blocking or we think they're blocking, in the mind of the player, they're blocking. So we have two choices at that point. One choice is to, obviously, well, we have a few choices. One is to hit tighter balls so that the opponent cannot take so much space from the middle of the court. That's really the only thing that's in our control to maintain free-flowing squash. The second thing is that if our opponent is blocking or we think they're blocking, they're not getting out of the way after hitting. What a lot of players do is that they deliberately go through the opponent to show them that if you're going to stand on the ball, get ready for some physicality. And then the other reason they do this is to make it very evident to the referee that, hey, this person's standing on the ball, I want to play this ball. Now again, I'm not condoning pushing. I'm not suggesting we push our opponents. I just want to clarify a little bit of what's happening over here. That's all. Okay, let's watch this clip again. I'm going to slow it down periodically to show you some of the length hitting that we're talking about. So even as this rally begins over here, quality serve, catching sidewall, late, pushing Marwan into the back corner, forcing something loose because Marwan was pinned. His ball caught the sidewall early, and as a result, bounces early. Victor is able to take it just at the back of the service box. Okay, so that's the first correlation. Second one, ball hits where that green circle is, so a little bit further relative to the one that Marwan hit a minute ago, and Marwan's hitting it with a slightly longer lunge, slightly behind where Victor just hit his shot from. And then that one comes through the court, so Victor's pushed back. That one comes through the court, but it's a bit loose, so Marwan's pushed back a little bit more. That one is through the court and angling into the sidewall, so Victor is under a little bit more pressure. Nice and tight and high and deep. That one catches sidewall a bit early. Marwan gets good width and depth, sidewall early, Marwan's on it early, and this time Marwan's very stable, not in as extended of a lunge, so he's able to take the ball and shorten attack. Nice control from the midcourt by Marwan. Victor tries to use height to buy time, not accurate enough, but still buys time. That's clean and through. Victor's catches sidewall early, it pops out. Sidewall early, pops out. Sidewall early, pops out. Little hold to get the width, sidewall early and pops out. That's good width, pushing him into the back. Now this one was the first cross-court example, so let me rewind it just a tiny bit. So Marwan hits that cross nice and wide. You watch the ball, catches the sidewall really wide, and like we talked about a minute ago, when it catches sidewall wide, Victor is up, but you see his first movement is to just drop straight back in the court, and because of that width, Victor pushes back and he's hitting the ball way out of that back corner. Gets decent width, so Marwan is not able to volley, and at least he pushes Marwan into the back of the court. Now from here, Marwan, so this was interesting because we see the movement piece as well, so let me rewind this a little bit. There are a few things we want to watch. So watch Victor, his T position. Marwan hits his drive. Watch Victor's first step is to the left of the court, and his racket comes up looking to volley, just like we talked about a second ago. But because he realized Marwan's length is catching the sidewall at precisely the point that we just discussed a minute ago, he puts his right foot down to push himself back. And there you go. Ball catches exactly where he would ideally want to volley, and there he has to drop back in order to get the length off the back wall. Plays that long drop, nice and tight, squeezing Marwan. Forces a weak ball, gets another angle over here. pushes Marwan into the back of the court again. Marwan gets a pretty good angle from there, catches the sidewall a little bit later. So Victor's not really in an attacking position anymore. Marwan has neutralized some of that pressure now. So there is another example of the ball running away from Victor. So Marwan again gets that solid cross court. You see Victor's first step is to the left, racket is up, looking to volley, ideally looking for that weak cross, but Marwan gets really good width, so Victor has to put the brakes on. A lot of players, this is a common error, a lot of players just keep going and they try to force this volley and then they miss-hit the ball. So you see Victor put the brakes on over here, and then he moves backwards to catch that ball before the side wall, or before the back wall rather. But because the ball's traveling at him, he's now in a pretty, fairly defensive position. Puts the ball in the front wall, and this is how the rally ends, as we saw. Marwan plays the drop, kind of stands on it a little bit, and at this point Victor is, like I said, rightly or wrongly, making his point about, hey, get out of my way. Now again, I'm not condoning any of that, I just wanted to share the rationale behind it. Okay, final thoughts for you. If you got a lot of value out of that video, please give it the thumbs up, please like it, please subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. I love hearing from you. And if you know someone that would benefit from this content and would love to learn this, please share it with them. Now, if you did get that value and you want a coaching system and you want to work directly with me in order to exponentially increase the rate of your squash growth so you can learn how to train efficiently and effectively and have fun doing it, if you're ready to put in consistent effort, if you want to work directly with me, like I said, and if you appreciate the quality and effectiveness of premium services, send me an email at ahad@arperformance.com and let's discuss how we can help you achieve your squash goals. If the premium services are not for you, or if you don't want to work directly with me one-on-one, definitely check out Squash Skills as well. They have a fantastic playlist of a lot of videos that you will learn a lot from. Folks, take care, have a fantastic day, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.